wheelbarrow. Ran into it. I'm like a bitch.
We're rolling, boys. How's everyone doing?
That's how we're going to start this out.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Shane, how are you doing?
I'm 100%.
100%.
Yeah. Or as Mike Johnson would say, satisfactory.
Satisfactory.
Aaron, how are you?
It's week 3 of the quarantine.
Is it?
I think so. I don't know. I haven't been in school since March 13th, so it's been a while.
Gym closed March 25th.
So
Seems like years ago.
it's been a while.
What'd you guys have for lunch?
I've not eaten lunch yet.
Pork chop sandwich. Really not sure how old the pork chop was. Found it in the back of the refrigerator, and I ate it.
Yeah, violent diarrhea.
Absolutely not.
Oh my, yeah, no, you
No,
are.
no. Mm-mm.
I had a good breakfast though. A white omelet with spinach. And,
That's your go-to. You eat the same breakfast every day, don't you?
I do, with a piece of toast on the bottom and fried egg on top.
Do you eat the same breakfast every day?
Most days. 2 eggs, scrambled, steak, peppers cut up, sauteed in.
Steak for breakfast.
Hey,
Wow.
wow.
Yeah.
Man.
We thought you were the bougie one.
Oh no, he's bougie.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but we'll roll it.
Oh, you eat the same dinner every day too, don't you?
No.
Ribeye and filleted tuna.
Yeah. Salmon, remember. That's not tuna.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, sweet.
Now that we've caught up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen you guys in weeks. I'm glad that was the way we took our conversation now. Yeah. How about I just go fart right off now? All right. Dude, let's dive into some topics. Good one last week. You actually brought it up in the membership page.
Hypertrophy versus strength training.
Versus strength training in cycles.
Right.
As it pertains. What does everyone think about that?
Well, I think if members don't come to like every class or come every day and they miss the beginning of a cycle, they may not understand like the stimulus behind the strength training. Like why are the numbers, why is it this many sets versus this many reps on this cycle, and then next cycle it's this versus this. And I think the difference obviously is hypertrophy training versus strength training in the cycle, but explaining what the motivation behind that is would help, I think, now that we have time to discuss.
Yeah. So basically, if you want to simplify it down, you got like your hypertrophy, right? And that's, you're looking to add some sort of size to the muscle cell itself. And you have 2 variations of which you can do that. You can increase the number of muscle fibers that you have, or you can increase the size of the muscle fiber, right? When you do really high reps, like 15 to 30, you're adding more of a sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which is increasing the size because you're allowing more metabolites to be taken up by the muscle fiber itself, right? Just to get kind of a little more complicated than it needs to be. When you do something more in, like I'd say, the 5 to 12 range, more optimally the 8 to 12 range is where you're going to see most hypertrophy. So if you see stuff programmed like you're doing 3 sets of 8 to 12, the number one basis for it is hypertrophy. Because that is what studies over a long period of time have shown leads to the best size increases in muscle, right? Is that 8 to 12 range, because it taxes the muscle enough. It means you're using a load that's heavy enough to challenge the body. It's not so light that it turns into like endurance. So if you're doing 8 to 12 reps with a weight that you could do 40 to 50 reps with, you're not going to get as much stimulus as if you're pushing that 8 to 12 like one set of failure, like one rep shy of failure. You differ that hypertrophy, which you want that 8 to 12 optimal range, okay? That's not to say you can't get bigger muscles outside of that range. It happens. That's just the optimal one, okay? If you look into more strength training, then you're looking to go more of the 3 to 5 if you're training for strength, okay? Now, you don't see 1s and 2s quite often used if you're training for strength training because a lot of that comes down to neuromuscular efficiency when you get to that low or that high of a load, right? What you may have in the tank for one day for a 1RM might not be what you have in the tank for 1RM the following day or week or month, and you usually have to build up to that. 1-rep maxes are usually a result of everything leading up to it, not necessarily a result of, okay, I'm going to do 1-rep maxes over and over and get stronger. There's ways you can do that and go about it, and it's been done in history. If you look at like Bulgarian strength training, but it's not typical, right? And so typically leading up in cycles, I'll just give you an idea of like how I program for Bohica stuff. Generally our strength cycles will start off on the higher end of the strength spectrum or the low end of the hypertrophy spectrum, so it kind of blends those two together. So you get a little bit of strength and you get a little bit of hypertrophy. And this builds the foundation for the later because a bigger muscle has more capacity, okay, to move heavier weight than a smaller muscle does. Okay, so if we start off our cycles, let's say week 1, we do sets of 8 on the back squat, and we go 3 to 4 sets of 8, right, at a challenging weight into which we maybe have 1 or 2 left in the tank, or maybe in that cycle we work up to an 8 or 10 rep max or something like that. Follow that up, the next week we drop it down to the 5s or 6s. Right? The weight's getting heavier, but we've now acclimated the body a little bit to the weight training. We started off by providing a stimulus with higher reps, okay, a little bit more skill training, but the weight's getting heavier, so now we're getting a little bit of a neuromuscular effect. Now our body's kicking in to where we have to fire our nerves to really push some heavy weight. Then the next we're going down to 3s or 4s, right? When you get to that 3s or 4s, yes, you're still going to build strength. Yeah, you're still going to build a little bit of muscle. Not as optimal as when you're building that hypertrophy, but you're still seeing that increase in muscle size, but now you're really focused on strength. This is where you kind of peak and push that body to build as much strength as possible. Typically, you could either follow that up with a deload, which would be classical periodization, or you can follow that week up with just a 1-rep max, right? There's no right or wrong way. We've done both. Some people will adapt one way, some people will adapt the other way. But that is essentially how we break down, how we differentiate hypertrophy and strength in cycles at Bohica for our main lifts.
Actually, I think the only other thing that I would add to that is when you're going hypertrophy versus strength or hypertrophy versus absolute strength, hypertrophy, like Chris pointed out, is going to put on mass quicker, or is going to increase muscular size quicker. That becomes important because when you start talking about stabilizing a joint, the more mass you can put or the more muscular strength you can put around that joint, the better off that you are. Big for CrossFitters, big for you if you play a contact sport. When we start writing strength cycles for athletes, we want to find the great balance between I've got to make sure that I am increasing this person's overall strength, but at the same time, I need to make sure that I am giving this person what they need to stabilize around the knee or around the shoulder, around the elbow, around the hip.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when we talk about accessory work that's programmed in, or that's really where we do a lot more in the programming with hypertrophy work. And it's for that exact purpose. It's to stabilize that joint system that we're using, just to build that muscle mass around it. And I think, we probably a lot more so than some gyms blend the two, the hypertrophy and the strength within our strength training, like our weightlifting components. I think we do a lot of that kind of blending the hypertrophy and strength in each cycle. And I didn't, I want to make sure people understood that there are definitely other ways to do it, but we definitely try to end up blending it together more than I think a lot of places do.
And it comes down to would I program for someone who came to me and was like, I just want to do Olympic weightlifting and that's all I want to do?
Right. Totally different.
Is your CrossFit class going to make me the best Olympic weightlifter I could possibly be? Probably not. Right. Like, if we're being honest. Right? The number one thing we're after, build the strongest, healthiest body. And by strongest, I mean strong in as many areas as possible. If you can back squat 400, but it hurts if you pick up a deadlift 185 off the ground, you're not doing yourself any good.
Right.
Okay, unless the back squat just really means that much to you. In which I'd argue, what is your purpose for that?
Right.
And so our program is all about making you strong in as many facets as possible. Now, the beauty of it is, and the thing that's still not understood in the fitness world itself, in all honesty, is so many people are going for this optimize like approach that even I got caught up in, when I first started studying and learning all this and diving into literature, is people get so caught up in like, well, the Russian weightlifters did it this way in the 80s, this is how I need to do it. They did it this way at Westside Barbell, this is how I need to do it. This is how they're doing it at, this is how they're doing it at Cal Strength, this is what I need to get stronger. What people don't realize is that up until you reach this overly specialized point, which, to be frank, not a lot of people are going to reach, right? Simply because you have a life outside of the gym and you simply won't have enough time to dedicate gym time, one, but the amount you'd have to recover from the things we give you, two. You know what I mean? You don't have time to run a 3-hour training block and then recover for 2 hours after in a day.
Right.
You don't have it now. Like, this is like, don't think just because you're like you're not having to go to work or anything, like this is the time that I can really push it and like really find out what I'm capable of. Nah, it's not that time for that. You need to train to support your health, not train to beat it down.
Right.
But this kind of ties in, unless you had something else you want to add.
The one thing, and you hit this without saying it, when you're writing programming, and you correct me if I'm wrong, when you're writing programming for our general population at the gym, you're training for general preparedness. When you started naming the different types of methods in the different gyms, they're not training for general preparedness. GPP is part of what they're training for, but that's not specifically what they're training for. They may be trying to develop a power lifter. They may be trying to develop an Olympic weightlifter. They may be trying to develop a strongman. And all of those things, you're going to be looking for different stimuluses within your programming. And you said that without coming right out and saying it.
Yeah.
So,
and the things that they post they're not posting a lot of these things for their workouts for the general population. They're posting their workouts for this specialized athlete that's, competing at a certain level. So I think that's sometimes people say, oh, so-and-so's doing this, maybe I should do it. That gym that's putting that out there and programming that is programming that for a very specific individual or couple of individuals.
Yeah, I think it's important to also note, like, what I was kind of getting at was, don't put yourself on such a high pedestal and put that pressure on yourself. Right. You can get like a really high snatch, a really high clean jerk, a really high back squat, front squat, deadlift, whatever, following the program we've done.
Yeah.
Right? And I always say that because I've seen people do it. Right? But I don't want you to get so good at deadlift that we deadlift 52 weeks a year and we negate something else. Right? And from what I've seen, just personally programming in CrossFit, because CrossFit's not a very studied form of training. It's not. There's not a lot of studies out on it of like, okay, if we do this one day and then we lift heavy after and then we do this, what's the effect after 8 weeks if this is implemented? There's no studies like that. And so what a lot of us who program CrossFit, and if you go from like the really top guys like Ben Bergeron, or CJ out of CrossFit Invictus, like you got really top guys, they're pushing the envelopes, but they're realizing that like stuff has carryover when you do it right. Okay, so we'll go through phases where we have clients who will come right back to a movement after not doing it for 8 weeks, and they're just as strong at that movement.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing I try to let people know. Like, you're not at that 99% of your potential yet, and you probably will never be there just because of how much it takes to get there, right?
The amount of training.
So you don't need to worry about a specialized deadlift program. You just need to make sure every time you do something that can potentially build your deadlift up, you're doing it with a good intention.
Right.
You're not skipping the accessory work. You're doing all the sets, all the reps. You're asking the coaches, hey, how should I approach this workout if you're not sure what it is, okay? Those are the little things, and you'll see that carry over. You'll leave the deadlifts alone for 8 weeks, but the accessory work had a bunch of good mornings, Supermans, pulling in the wads. Maybe it's lighter, but you have to pull a lot more in the wads. Right. And then you come back to your deadlift 8 weeks later, and you're like, still good. And that's one thing I picked up on my own training before I implemented it to the whole gym, right? I got hurt a couple years ago where I couldn't really do anything with my shoulder, and I wasn't pulling a bar, and I wasn't doing pull-ups, I wasn't doing anything. The second my shoulder felt good, I started working out again. And this kind of turns over into another topic that was brought up, and I've had a couple people message me about this. They're worried about losing their gains in the next 6 to 8 weeks. The only thing you're probably going to lose in the next 6 to 8 weeks, and you mitigate this by 1, training, and you mitigate this by 2, making sure you're eating enough, all right, to fuel what you were doing before, is the neuromuscular efficiency to get something done, right? I have found that even after long breaks, if I get back into a flow, I don't push it going right back in, but I give it a week or 2 and I work back into it steady, build the technique up a little bit, that I'm really close on almost all my lifts. Okay? Now, I have a fairly good technical proficiency on most things, meaning when I come back, it doesn't feel clunky at first. Like maybe the first day doing cleans back, and maybe hitting it low or something like that. I have to switch that up and that fix it. But then 2 weeks later, I'm right back to pretty much where I was. Right? I can hit like 90%. You say, hey, take your best all time, go hit 90% with the proper warm up and everything. I'm probably going to do it. Because I don't get caught up in that one lift, but I still train everything around it. It's like right now, if you're doing hollow hold Supermans, mastering those and mastering push-ups, let's say you're someone who was on the brink of doing handstand push-ups or something. When you come back, if you've been hitting those things correctly, you're still going to have it.
Yeah.
Right? So, what are y'all's thoughts on, and maybe even use some personal examples of breaks you've had in the past, because I think the 3 of us have trained long enough that this 6 to 8 week break isn't really anything for us. This is just normal. I experience this probably twice a year, in which I have 6 to 8 weeks where I am not doing a majority of the stuff in the gym, or at least at the weight or the skill that I would be doing it. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot to be said for mastering basic gymnastics movements, like you were talking about, hollow Supermans, basic pressing foundations, and that's the reason why we've given our members the opportunity every Monday to kind of shoot that video with one of our coaches, and they really break down basic gymnastics movements, because I think as you perfect those things, your other movements, the other things are going to take care of themselves. I know as far as me personally, I think most of you guys know this, most of you guys are aware of this. I pretty much stopped CrossFitting from August each year to whenever football season ends. And the past couple years we've been fortunate. Football seasons run us into the last weekend in November. And the last 2 years I've been very deliberate about making sure my diet's dialed in where it needs to be, making sure that I'm taking care of the little things that I'm not able to, or that I'm taking care of the little things to stay dialed in with some of the other things that I miss. Like I may go 3 months and the only time I see a bike or I see a rower or I see muscle ups or bar muscle ups are when I go in the gym on a Saturday. And if I'm making sure that my positioning is that I'm taking care of my position, I'm taking care of being familiar with my arch and being familiar with my Superman, and I'm making sure that I'm still maintaining a good basis of an air squatter, making sure that my position on the wall or my vertical alignment position, as long as I'm making sure those things are good, the CrossFit stuff comes back quickly. And in the last 2 years, you can see that. You can see that in the charting or the tracking that I'm doing in my daily logs. I know Chris and I and Shane, even you, we kind of get a laugh sometimes when I come back in December and some of the things I'm able to hit that I wouldn't have thought that I would have been able to. And I've been a lot more consistent with that the last 2 years than I was prior to that, and it's helped out a lot. So
yeah, and I think, especially during this time when we're still working out, the workouts that are being programmed are still focusing on the muscle groups, the muscle memory for all the movements. Even if if we're not able to do everything at home, it's still focusing on that movement pattern,
right,
the muscles that are involved, the stimulus that's involved. So the only way that you're going to lose your gains in this period of time is if you just stop working out, period. That's the only thing that's going to affect your gains, is if you just don't do anything. So I think that the workouts are right on key with keeping everybody in that condition that they were before. And in fact, with the running challenge and the new challenge, I think a lot of people are going to find, if they really take this seriously, that's a lot of running. And so I think from a cardiovascular standpoint, an endurance standpoint, an aerobic capacity standpoint, everybody's going to come back in better shape. And that will probably translate a lot into how many reps you can do before fatiguing in a generalized WOD, with a lot of body weight movements. So I think this is really going to probably put people in a better position than they anticipate.
Absolutely. All right, so Shane,
Ready to answer some questions?
What?
You guys ready to answer?
Oh, yeah, answer questions, yeah.